Let me make sure I'm unmuted. Is that good, Vinny? Cool. Yeah, so it sounds like, maybe at the front, you're just full of inspiration, but then how do you figure out what to actually build, right? Um, the great thing about hackathons is that it gives you a playground to just test out these ideas. This is something that is pretty bad, right? Like when you look at it, what's popping into your head? I'm actually really curious. Does anyone want to take a stab? Like, obviously, this is not a project that would win at a hackathon, right? But why? What's wrong with it? Okay, what about the UI? Like, when you look at it, how does it make you feel? This is actually live on V0, so it is something that you can poke around with, and I'll be sharing the slides afterwards. But if I open this up in a full screen view, right? So it's called Hydro AI Pro Max. It's a revolutionary AI-powered hydration optimization platform. It's got machine learning, blockchain, and IoT, right? So this makes no sense, right? Because there's so much stuff on the screen that you don't know where to look. And what problem are we even trying to solve? It's a hydration tracker, right? I think oftentimes when we're building projects, you can have maybe a technology that you really want to use or an API that you just want to get the hang of, but we don't have the right use case to fit that into, right? At the end of the day, design is about building something that solves a real problem. And what does that mean, right? A problem can only exist when there's a gap between your initial and your goal state. So in this example in particular, our goal state is someone who doesn't remember to drink water is now hydrated, right? But this could have been solved with some sticky notes on your desk to say, remember to drink water on the hour. So this is just a note to say that with design, I know we often think about software and UI and UX, but a lot of the best solutions don't have an interface that you can build in Figma. Sometimes it's a post-it note, sometimes it's a bash script that you run in your IDE, and sometimes it's actually a piece of software, right? So that's the note that I want to start on for today. And also, I'm curious if anyone wants to offer what they feel like design means to them. Any takers? You're all in a room called Design 101. So, I mean, you're here for a reason. I'm sure you must have some inklings. Vinny, please.
Some general layout with some creative idea behind it, maybe.
Okay, so creative idea, it sounds like maybe a solution to some sort of problem, and the layout is the medium through which you're enacting that, right? Okay, anyone else? I know you're very bright. You're at HackMIT, you guys. Because when we look at the hackathon winners every year, you're starting off with the same APIs, you have the same time constraints and the same rough demographic of people, young hackers, right? You're ambitious, you're curious. So why is it that some projects win and some projects flop, right? The answer is design. So this is a definition I found online that I thought was kind of funny. Design is to design a design to produce a design. And that's because design is not only a noun, so the general field, but also a verb to create something with intention. It's also an artifact. And now we have bubble tea. That's great. We'll have a break in the middle to enjoy this. One way that we can think of design as well is the design of a space and a workshop, right? I think one way we could have designed this a little better is if the bubble tea arrived 10 minutes before and we could distribute it. But that was just part of the workshop design that we have now. And the best thing that we can do is figure out, okay, here are the constraints. It arrived at this time. What's the best way to bridge the solution, which is to feed some hungry hackers? So we're going to do that at halftime. And at the end of the day, design is to create an artifact, right? Whether that is, again, software, a script, a physical object. A definition that might feel more familiar to some folks is design is the intentional process of creating plans, sketches, or concepts for something new, like an object, system, or experience to solve problems or meet specific goals. So that's a lot of words, right? But when we break it down, it's the intentional process of creating something to solve a problem, right? So now that we have a little bit of background about what design is, I'm going to tell you what this workshop is going to be. We're going to show you some of the fundamental frameworks that you're using in the back to help you understand how do I come up with an idea that is not only interesting to me, but useful for the people that I'm building for, right? So we're going to understand why we do design and not just how to make things pretty. Because I think a common misconception is people think, oh, design is just graphic design. It's just how it looks. It's just the surface veneer. But I think that's why you end up with maybe something that looks nice, but functionally is like the worst experience ever, right? So what this workshop is not is, this is not Figma 101. There's lots of great tutorials I can point you towards online afterwards. And it's not going to be a step-by-step, like, here's exactly how you do it, draw a frame, draw a rectangle, make a component. I think these are all great skills, but at the end of the day, design tools will always evolve, but the underlying principles won't. So I'm not going to hand you guys some fish. I'm going to hand you guys some fishing rods and throw you into the ocean. And now that we've gotten some of that context out of the way, I actually wanted to ask if there's any Canadians in the room. Okay, no one. That's actually very sad, because there was actually someone from my high school named Akira just came up to me right before the workshop. And he was like, Flo from Samyamu? I was like, yeah. But the reason why I bring this up is I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. And it's kind of unorthodox to do this like a third of the way through, right? But I actually started off in biomedical engineering, which has very little to do with what I do now, but the underlying principles were the same. My favorite courses were human factors in design, engineering design 101. I did a lot of CAD, stuff like that. Then I moved on to product design, right? So I worked on public tools with the Ontario government. I worked in-house at startups. I also worked on COVID-19 data dashboards. After that, I moved on to more of an independent practice. So this is more of your traditional like software design, right? Product design, brand, creative direction, web design. And most recently, I got into design engineering. So this is all to say that these roles might sound very different, but fundamentally, they have so many things in common. Even though they are spread across domains and different job titles, every role is trying to solve a problem, right? And some of the work that I've done in the past spans across a bunch of different industries. Anything from quantum computing, you'll see some like electron orbital illustrations there, to AI startups, to I used to work in crypto, so there was a lot of decentralized finance. I know everyone has that era, but then we mature and move on. But that's to say that even though a lot of these industries on the surface look very different, my process has always been fundamentally quite similar. And when we think about design, right, like all of you, I too was once a university student, but I dropped out in sophomore year. And that's because I realized my initial state was I was an engineering student at Waterloo. I was miserable. My ideal goal state was I'd be making a lot of money in San Francisco working at a cool startup. But I think at the time I didn't really know how to, I thought that would make me happy, but I didn't know how to get there. So it turns out that when you apply a design approach to your life, sometimes the solution is not to finish a four-year degree and work your way up, but to try something more unconventional, to take a leap of faith. And I think design is about exploring these solutions that may not appear very intuitive off the bat. Like no one really, when you drop out, you either build a company or people think you're crazy. So it's not really the most intuitive thing, but it ended up working for me, right? And I think as a designer, what you're always doing is just testing out these different solutions. You're branching out and seeing what might work, what might not work. But as you can see, there's so many rays coming out of one node, right? And that's because oftentimes you have to make a lot of slops to get to one thing that might be promising to continue building, right? So I really want to encourage you to just use this weekend as an opportunity to make some really crappy stuff at first so that you can figure out what's actually worth doing. And the way that I hope you guys can frame this process is to set an intent before you build, right? What does that mean? I'm like saying a lot of words, but let's figure out what I'm actually trying to get you guys to take away. Has anyone here ever used cron? It's now known as Notion Calendar. Okay, we have one, two, three people. Okay. To this day, I believe cron to be one of my personal favorite pieces of software, right? But why? Like everyone uses a calendar. A lot of people use Google Calendar. A lot of people use Apple Calendar. Like, who am I kidding? No one uses Apple Calendar. With cron, as you can see, there's a lot of meetings on this calendar, right? maybe I want to say a 4-day view. Maybe I want to see a 6-day view, or maybe a 9-day view, or maybe I want to meet with someone, right? I could press F to meet with, and then put in an email, immediately offers me some slots I can send. If I don't have a meeting time in mind yet, I can actually block off some time in my calendar and then copy paste a snippet that says, hey, are you available to meet at this time? Right? So all of these things like keyboard shortcuts, like I would love if Google Calendar had keyboard shortcuts, but why did they think of this in the first place? Well, to give you some of the context, the creator of Cron, his name is Raphael Shad. He actually did his PhD right here at MIT Media Lab. And his background is in Swiss engineering. He's from Switzerland, right? His thesis was that all of the grad students at MIT, bro, these people have like very busy calendars and they're using really crappy software to manage their time, right? So for the people whose time matters the most to them, why don't they have the same level of precision in their tools, right? So a thesis was essentially people who value their time should have software that feels like a well-engineered Swiss watch. And to do that, he went beyond just typical conventions of like, 1 week, 1 day, 1 month views, but added the flexibility for people to make it customizable. And ultimately, it's all of these hundreds of little micro decisions that stack up to make something that actually feels really delightful and really well thought out to use. So his thesis, again, busiest people value their time. They need a better way to manage it. It's a clear initial state, crappy calendar software, a goal state where you can get into the flow, track your meetings, send invites without needing to just wrangle things that don't feel very intuitive. So one way that you can think about this is everyone knows what an onion is, right? Like I bet y'all eat this at least twice a week. But one way that we can think about this is we're going to start peeling the layers of this onion, right? When you look at software, what do you see? That's the surface veneer. You see colors, you see components, you see typography, copywriting. Okay, well, if we were to pick one layer deeper, all of these decisions had to be made by someone, and each of them had a deeper context as well, right? So when we look at the fonts used here, it's all sans serifs, right? Why? Because sans serifs are a lot easier to read than serifs. Why is it that this is the biggest typography on this page? It's because your eye is drawn to it right away by both the color. It's darker than the rest of it. It's a little larger. Here we have this really bright orange, right? Again, it draws your attention. So by this use of color, layout, typography, and contrast, you're able to engineer an experience where people's attention is already drawn towards the next action that you want them to take, right? He had a clear thesis. I want to make it easy for people to manage their time. Okay, what's important for people doing that? Okay, it's really important to me what day it is. All right, I'll make that orange. Now your eye goes to it right away. I have these collapsible sidebars. This makes it easy for me to have just really complex controls all at once, but at the same time, making the most out of our screen real estate, right? So when we break this down, essentially, let me move this. We have the surface level, then we have the underlying context, right? Who is it built for? When was this built? How are we going to build it? And what problem are we solving, right? And these are all still kind of surface level questions, because when you actually get down to the root level, we want to understand, all right, buddy, what's your game plan here? You're at this hackathon, you probably want to win. How are you going to do that? What's your thesis or what's your hypothesis, right? We make things because we believe that the world is, some sort of way, but we want to see it a different type of way. And that gap between your initial and goal state, that's the problem that you're solving. And in order to solve that problem, you have to have a hypothesis, right? So everything that you're building now, I want you to look at it with the framework of what is my hypothesis and how am I going to validate that? Well, I'm glad that you asked this rhetorical question because I was going to answer it right away. Again, initial state, where are we right now? What are we dealing with? Why is this a problem? Our goal state, where do we want people to be? And design is going to be our bridge. It's the context, the decisions, and the intention that we use in our design to get them to cross, right? From our initial to goal state. We help user in initial state reach goal state by mechanism/decision. And the culmination of all these decisions is your design. So when we break it down a little bit more, I'll send all of this in like there's a tiny URL, so you can have this as reference for the end. But at the end of the day, we want to have a very clear, tangible result that we can visualize, right? And then once we understand that underlying outcome and the intent, then everything can cascade down. Oh, because I want the user to do this, I'm going to choose this font, or I'm going to choose this color. It shouldn't be like top left, like, oh, I love this font. It's so pretty. I really want to use it. Oh, everyone's struggling to find what they need in my software. I wonder why. So when you flip it so that the onion, like no one peels an onion from the inside out. Like, how would you even do that? You peel the onion from the outside in, right? Cool. So let's do maybe one more example to get the hang of it. And then I want y'all to work on coming up with your own thesis, right? So some examples, you're probably students. So we help students who forget their assignments. I've been there. I dropped out. So, but we help them stay on track by turning their syllabus into reminders. How might we do that? Maybe I have a field where I can drag in PDFs of a syllabus. Maybe I have some sort of model that will scrape all the dates, or maybe it doesn't even need to be a model. It could be like a freaking regex expression, right? I'm going to parse out all the dates, and I'm going to create a nice UI that reminds me of when my things are due. Maybe I'll have a calendar export so I can easily import it into Google Calendar. Bam, I'll never forget assignment again, or at least not the deadline. I might, still not hand it in for whatever reason. Another example, we help climate researchers drowning in PDFs, so they have a lot of text to work through, get insights quickly by auto-summarizing documents. So what might that look like? What might a solution for this look like? Any takers? I know you're all smart. That's why you're here. Maybe you're just shy. MIT is not known for being the most party school, I guess. But I know you have frats here, so anyone? I'm gonna pick on Chris in the front. What might be a solution to this?
You can build an extension on top of PDF, so you don't have to download it.
Okay, interesting.
So you open the link and then it opens up, and you can immediately hit the extension or hit a command, and then it opens the extension. Immediately gives you a summary. Get insights quickly. Another way you can do that is probably highlight over a few things and then maybe that on the screen. Yeah,
that's a pretty good idea, I actually have a Chrome extension that does just that. Like, let's see, let's pick up view PDF. I try to highlight these guys. Highlight this PDF. Bam! Wow, it's an extension that does exactly what Chris just. I didn't plan him, by the way. That was actually kind of surprising, but it's a good enough idea that someone actually made it with keyboard shortcuts. It's very easy to use. I personally love reading heavy text, and it's really helpful to just have many different colors of highlighters, right? Like, what is this even? 2 orbital superconductivity and cuprate family? I'd love to learn more about that, but maybe some other time, right? Cool. So now that we've worked through a couple of examples, I'd love to show you what I actually spend my waking hours working on. So paradigm of context is, let me just pull up the website to be honest. It is a AI-powered spreadsheet. Now, what does that even mean, right? What was our thesis here? It's that knowledge workers spend a lot of time doing manual workflows, right? What if you could have an AI agent do all of this for you? What does that even look like? Well, let's do a little demo, right? So say I'm an investor and I want to learn more about startups that I'm considering investing in, right? I have a lot of companies I'm interested in. I have a lot of fields I might want to know to do my due diligence. But do you know how long it would take to get all of this information manually? Sure, you could use Perplexity, you could use ChatGPT deep research, but then that's still only one company at a time, right? So what if I could just click enrich and, oh, okay, I need to go on staging because I'm not even subscribed on prod, but I love this product, but I won't pay us $20 a month. Yeah, anyway. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's see how long this takes. So it's not instant, but it's a lot faster than if I were to sit down and go one by one, right? Cool. Okay, we're getting some ramp. We love ramp. Cool. So now I can see that this AI, this product, is essentially helping me solve the problem of doing a lot of manual research by using AI agents in a spreadsheet format to orchestrate mass research at scale, right? So all of these, like, I could expand this if I want to see more details, but like, this would have taken me a lot of time to like figure out. So my thesis is knowledge workers waste a lot of time doing repetitive manual tasks that could be automated if you gave an AI the right prompt. So we're going to build a format that just happens to be a spreadsheet, because that's a really easy way to configure prompts for AI in the columns and to use rows as a data object, right? So that was our thesis. And this is what I spend 16 hours a day sometimes working on. But we love it, no one wants to do manual knowledge work. This project is going to fix that. So our thesis: teams are stuck wrangling spreadsheets, copying data between tools, and wasting time on manual enrichment. Our goal is a spreadsheet that updates, enriches, and connects itself. Context: we use, a lot of investment bankers like using this, private equity, prosumers, so students like you. And the outcome, less busy work, more interesting knowledge work that you're enabled to do by getting the manual work automated for you. So now that we have an idea of how these design theses work, I just want to really emphasize the fact that thinking design is just how something looks is to believe that beauty is only skin deep. You're probably around the age where you're thinking about like, I really want a girlfriend, or I really want a relationship so that my mom doesn't, call me single during Thanksgiving. But, when you're trying to meet someone that you might like, if you're only indexing on how they look on the outside, I don't know, man, maybe not the best decision. I don't know if you want to bring that person home for the holidays. But if you're able to look below, what is visible on the outside, but just ask like, what does this person value? How do they make me feel? What do they care about? All of a sudden, you're able to just dive deeper into what actually makes you happy as a problem. Or like, your goal stays that you're single, your end stays you want to be happy during the holidays. Design is how you're gonna fix that, right? So design is how it looks, how it feels, how it works, and also how it's built. I am technically the least technical person on our team, even though I'm also an engineer who writes code for most of my time. But I started off in design. But even with that, I'll just spend hours talking with our CTO about why we migrated our entire backend from TypeScript to Go, right? That was a design decision. Even though there was no Figma file involved, it turns out that Go compiles in a lot less time than TypeScript does, right? And decisions like this, the stack that you're using to build your product, that is ultimately a really important design decision as well. So I just want everyone to walk away knowing that, it's not just how it looks, it's the architecture decisions that you make throughout the process. It's the people you're talking to figure out what to even build. It's how you're testing it. Again, design is the culmination of these decisions that we're making at each step of the process. So how are you all going to do this during the hackathon? Well, we have a toolbox. Yay! Nice. I feel like, like Bob the Builder, like gonna whip out some tools. I know a lot of folks use Figma here. This deck was built in Figma, but I actually want to encourage you to like use pen and paper, right? The thing is, when you jump straight into drawing rectangles and pretty buttons, you can over-index on the wrong things sometimes, right? Like I've spent many an hour trying to figure out the perfect shade of blue to use for the CTA button, but maybe the button doesn't even need to exist in the first place, right? And I think a really great way to even get to that point is just coming up with a lot of ideas very quickly. And what working with pen and paper allows you to do is that you can just put slop on it and you won't feel emotionally attached because it didn't take you that long to make that slop. But once in a while, you look at it, you're like, out of all the slop I just made, this is the least sloppy. And I want to invest more time and energy into it, right? So maybe then you're pulling up Figma and drawing maybe mid-fi frames, or maybe you want to jump straight into hi-fi. But I just want to encourage you to, not over-index on the wrong things. It's not just how it looks, it's the underlying intent behind it, right? And of course, I'm sure, who here identifies as a dev, like an engineer? What are your tech pronouns? Okay, some engineers, cool. Designers, anyone? One designer, and I brought him here, cool. Any like PME student types? Okay, again, so seems like mostly skewed towards engineering, right? But one designer and two people who identify as product people. But I want to encourage you to think about design, not just the person who's in Figma, but everyone is making decisions on their part, right? If you're an engineer, you're deciding how do you architect a component? Like when do I drill props versus when do I use like a different type, right? Like these are all design decisions as well. So even though you might be working in an IDE all day, I still want you to think about yourself as someone who designs and someone who builds, right? Because especially with AI, these roles are going to get murkier and murkier just in terms of where the borders are. And I think if you want to be employed after you graduate, it's great to just not attach your identity to like, I do one very specific type of work, but more so, I'm someone who's really great at solving hard problems, and I can use all these different tools at my disposal. So to make the most out of your time at the hackathon today, I want to encourage you to go like Pareto principle, 80-20 it, right? So the first most important thing is formulate your intent. You can make a beautiful UI, but if it was built on a shaky thesis, why did you come? Right? But sometimes we like to make pretty pictures, and that's okay too. Two, I want to think about once you have your intent, what's the single most important thing that you want to focus on each screen, right? That's where hierarchy comes in. Hierarchy is created using things like color, typography, I'll dive a little bit deeper into this. And at the end of the day, like 90% of design, at least for software design, is actually typography. So I'm just going to give you like some quick pointers. This is from a Twitter thread from a guy named Dan Liu. If you've ever used Luma or perhaps Glow, which is the Solana wallet, he's a design founder who I think is really great at making these types of like little generalizations to help you guys come up with better designs. So like you said, design is hard, but laying out the right text and typography is 80% of what makes something look kind of good, right? So we're just going to run through some quick tips. Again, this is all from Dan. I didn't make any of these images, but when you look at this text, right, you might think like, oh, it looks fine, but like this is not something you would see in production software, right? Or maybe you think it does, and that's why we're here to fix that together. But if you compare here, right, what do you notice that's different? The line heights, right? With typography, the way that you use the space between different lines is that's how users can visually discern what is one group, right? Here, why is there so much space between these guys? Are they like separated or something? Like marriage isn't going so hot, so they're super far from each other. And here it's really tight, it's hard to read, right? But if you see in the next image, we tightened the space between the title. We want the object to be perceived as one unit. And then we expand the space between the body because there's so much more content here that you need a little bit of more white space to make it easier to read, right? So even though you're looking at it, you're like, it's just a few pixels. Those pixels make a big difference because when, hopefully you make something that people want to use every day that really solves a problem. If they're going to spend like 2 hours a day staring at like bad typography, it really adds up. Like the cognitive load of that is something that you can very easily address by making these small tweaks. Some other things that are high leverage are just working on padding, right? Like, why does this look kind of off? It's because the padding on the horizontal and vertical is actually the same, right? Whereas here, it's a little bit more even. Because when you're designing a UI, you want to be very efficient with your space, right? All of these decisions of like, how far apart should something be? When do I draw a border? It's to help users create the right mental model that matches your data model, right? And when you look at text, like when do you baseline a line stuff versus center line stuff? Oftentimes when you look at projects, you're like, text is kind of all over the place. No one's using a grid. Like that's really hard to use, right? It's really hard to read when your eye has to go up and down. So most of the time, text in general in software should be left aligned. It's just easier to scan. Sometimes it can be center aligned if it's like short and a modal, or if it's like a marketing page. But if this is, more product design, which is what I imagine most people to be building this weekend, these are just some really handy tips to keep top of mind. And again, here, right? Like, why is it that one row of text is a lot easier to read? It's because when your eye scans to the next line, if it's too far, it's really easy to lose track of where you are, right? If you're building something like a dashboard that's maybe more information dense, you want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for people to skim your interface, because most people don't read all the stuff anymore. They're mostly skimming, right? So this is just to illustrate that I will be sending out, a doc at the end, or like you can actually go to tinyurl.com/design101-HackMIT. I'll like write it on the board or whatever, and then you can have all these slides at your disposal. So before we launch into like kind of a 2-minute partner activity, I think this could be a time to distribute some bubble tea as well. And then with that being said, I want you to just take like a couple minutes, turn to the person next to you, and come up with a thesis. So, what are you trying to do this weekend? It doesn't have to be your final project, but what's your goal state? What's your initial state? And how are you going to use design to bridge this? Okay. We'll be handing out bubble tea, but I do want you to be thinking, because I'm going to pick out like 3 people. So if you don't have answers, you'll look and feel bad. I'm just kidding. This is a judgment-free zone, Arnav, do you want some bubble tea? Yeah. Are they all the same? I think they're I guess people can come up and choose them. Oh, cute. Yeah, what's up? Yeah. I think we'll definitely have questions at the end. We still have like 20 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I can help you. So you're designing how you're presenting the bubble tea. Look at that, sorting by color. Okay. By the way, I'm Flo. It's great to meet you. What's your name?
I'm Sanjay.
Sanjay, it's a pleasure.
I'm one of the.
I guess this one. I was like, he's being an active participant.
Wait, when you call it the Apple Calendar thing, actually, you can say
I'm a big user of it.
Really?
You have to try Chrome.
I'll try it. Very nice. Like syncs with everything, but I guess so does anything with an account, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll make sure everyone has access to the slides afterwards, so you can use that. Yeah, for sure.
It was really good. Are you saying we're doing yours? Oh, actually, sorry. Okay. Are you gonna go to project?
We have to set up the
You like bubble tea?
I guess there's a prod session.
Huh?
Is there a prod?
I don't know.
Yeah, at 8.
Oh,
You guys
lol.
want to go?
That's out there, RDE.
Oh, is Richard there?
Well,
Well, we're a pod company, so
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Let me see. We have to go set up stuff for Hack.
Gotcha. It's okay. We'll wrap in a. Sorry, you're saying?
If you guys are interested, actually the room number isn't even on here. but
It shows.
It's somewhere.
I have enough of Richard in my life. He's really great. Oh, what's up? Yeah.
Do you have any YouTube channel?
Actually, yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. No way. Yeah.
Because actually,
What's
yeah,
insane?
because the way
Yeah.
you spoke, I really felt the influence of Ivan you.
Oh, really? That's so funny. Yeah, it's like youtube.com/logo or something like that.
See,
Oh,
it
man,
might be
yeah.
appearing like I might have seen my mobile a lot, but I've been
Yeah.
listening to your
Wow.
speech.
That's crazy. It's so good to meet you.
I'm not a design person though, but
Yeah.
like you said, I'm more leaning towards engineering.
That's really cool.
Unfortunately, that's why
Right.
I wanted to connect on that.
I'm so
Connect
glad.
with you so that you
Yeah.
know, maybe if engineering doesn't work out.
Wait, even if you do engineering, you're still doing design as part of that. So yeah. Definitely text me if you have any questions. I'm happy to give you my contact.
Give me
Oh,
a YouTube
yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna subscribe.
I haven't. Okay. I haven't made videos in a long time, but there's a podcast episode that I'm on here. I didn't realize that this is being live streamed right now, but here's yeah.
And is there any way I can connect with you? Like,
Yeah.
you want me to
Yeah.
LinkedIn or
Um,
Insta, whatever?
Yeah, LinkedIn is fine, but I don't really use LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Twitter
me
is
too.
probably what I'm most active on. If you have X.
Twitter.
Okay, I'll just put it up on the big screen as a shameless plug. But if you want to say hi, it's just x.com/FLOGUO. And then my website's also linked on this. And the website's just flogo.com. Yeah. So definitely DM me if there's anything. Just like, yeah. I can also give you my email or whatever. Yeah, there's like lots of things. Yeah. What was your name again?
I'm
Mado. It's a pleasure. How do you spell that?
MADHA.
MADHA Mado. Okay. It's
Or
such a
you can just
pleasure.
call me
Yeah.
Mad. That
Mad?
is-
Okay, that's sweet. I love nicknames. Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not knowing what
Right.
I'm doing. So.
No, I get that. I get that. Yeah, people call me Flo, but my full name is Flora. So yeah, sweet. Cool.
So you stay here in Boston?
No, I'm usually in San Francisco actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I flew out for this.
So
Yeah.
my next semester I'll be coming back. So actually I'm studying in
Okay.
India right now.
Awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
in Delhi right now. But
Right.
for my upcoming spring and fall, I'll be coming to University of Technology.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
maybe if you're there, maybe we can
Yeah.
connect.
I'll do like an event or something. You should come by. It's great to meet you, Matt. Yeah.
Definitely, I'll be there. Subscribe.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate that. It might be a hot minute, but thank you. Cool. Okay, now that everyone has bubble tea, I'm wondering if anyone actually did the exercise of coming up with the product thesis. This might feel like homework, but if you're here to like win a hackathon, you might have actually wanted to do it. Does anyone have an idea of what they might want to build this weekend? Any APIs you've got your eye on? Any problem spaces? Any users? The hackathon is in 2 days, you guys. That's okay. I'm usually a day of person, but you know. You look like you're deep in thought. What do you want to build this weekend? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Probably can ask someone else first.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Don't worry. What about you?
Me and my team are kind of still in the discussion phase, so I haven't settled down there.
That's okay. We don't
I
need to
think
be
pretty
committed.
much it's just
Yeah.
not healthcare, not sustainability.
Valid. I used to work in healthcare. Okay. But is there anything that actually makes you feel excited? You're all here because I'm assuming you like tech and you like building things. There has to be something that you guys like. Give me something. I'm begging you, please. You there from Germany.
I think I want to get into health tech because I like
Awesome.
building tech that has
Yeah.
some kind of purpose, or I can see some good results coming out of it.
Right.
And that's the reason why I want either do health tech or sustainability. Because these two parts I feel like have most impact, or they are the best for me as a motive to work on. So this is something, and I have to discuss with my team. My first hackathon, so
That's awesome.
I
Yeah.
don't have so much experience on what to get into this.
I'm really excited for you. What's your name? Yeah. Mona? Sorry. Moritz.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the thoughtful response, Moritz. Woo! All right, you guys. Okay, does anyone else want to offer what they're thinking about building? You know, it doesn't need to be something you're settled on, just like a general area of technology that you are curious about. I feel like everyone should have at least like 2 of those. You, Vinny, what are you interested in tech?
I'm not building anything, but
Yeah.
I don't know. One thing that hackers will have access to is like some glasses from a sponsor,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
maybe building something with that. So I don't know, something like if you're wearing the glasses like your whole day,
Mhm.
taking a picture with it every couple of hours, and then maybe like recounting it at the end of the day, something like that. Maybe like a,
Awesome. Yeah.
like a journal sort of thing.
That's really cool. Like, which glasses company, if I can ask? Oh, okay. My friend launched Waves like this year, so I was like,
really?
yeah. Like, definitely a lot of stuff to be done there. You know, privacy is always kind of, but you know, what can you do? We're here to build interesting things. Cool. So with that being said, the main takeaways from this workshop are just, if you want to figure out how to become a better designer, how to make better things, I just really encourage you to collect as much data as you can. And while you're doing that, clean your data. You know, if you're only looking at slop all the time, every day, guess what? You're going to make slop. So some recommendations that I have are, if you go onto mobin.com, this is a really great repository of production software, right? So they have a lot of websites, they have iOS, they have web apps, and depending on the piece or the type of software that you want to build, it can be really useful to just try and look at things and then break it down. Why does this feel good? Why does this feel right? You know, if you look at something that you make yourself and then you compare it to like an app on your phone, you're like, why does mine feel like I would never see it live? And why does this feel so good? So what design actually helps you do is it helps you see the world around you in the way of someone who might create it, right? There's this quote that I really love, actually. I'm just going to pull out Twitter of how the cultural texts of our time, one of them is, as you become an adult, you realize that the things around you weren't always there. People made them happen, right? But only recently have I started to internalize how much tenacity everything requires. That hotel, that park, that railway, that app. The world is a museum of passion projects. And I think a hackathon is the perfect playground for you to find out what that passion might be for you, right? You don't have to make something that's ready to ship to 1 billion users right now, but just start with the smallest possible action. You know, what's the minimum viable action? Validate that. Maybe it's a sketch on a piece of paper, show it to a friend. Oh, what do you think? Okay, here's a suggestion, keep building. Maybe you make it to a Figma prototype. Maybe you make it to a really janky code prototype. Maybe you make a piece of something that's really high fidelity and people can actually use today, right? So at the end of the day, I really encourage you to use this opportunity at HackMIT to just chase something that you're actually curious about. You know, I know we're all looking at sponsor prizes like, oh, I can make so much money, but like, you know, you could always make money after you get a job or whatever. Like, this is a chance to make something that you actually care about. And I'm personally very excited for each of you to explore what that looks like. Thank you. I really appreciate you all taking the time. I know that design is often not the first thing that comes to mind when you come to a hackathon. So it means a lot that you wanted to explore what this might mean to you. And with that being said, I'm very curious if there's any questions in the audience. We have like maybe 5-ish minutes. People want to, yeah.
Was there some design decision behind this that you have the slides like this?
Yeah. So for sure. I think a common type of presentation that we see is something that's very linear. You know, you have one slide and you press next. But what that creates is a very rigid type of presentation because there's no way to hop around, right? So say someone in the audience says something that I think is really interesting. If you're zooming in and out like this, it's much easier to context switch. You can go from like high level to low level to high level to low level again, depending on the audience, right? Because the way that I wanted to design this presentation is ultimately to cater to what you guys are interested in, right? It's not about me, it's about you. So that's a little bit of the rationale behind why. Yeah. Vinny, please.
Like I think you briefly touched on it just with like I don't know, increasing like intersection of like AI with like everyday lives, jobs in general. Do you have any like can you just elaborate more on like your thoughts on AI and the industry, particularly design, and like how I don't know if the industry might change?
Yeah, actually, the other day in SF, I hosted a fireside where we got a few of our friends. I don't know if y'all have recognized any of these companies. We got Cursor, we got Windsurf, Cognition, blah, blah, blah. Paradigm, of course. But basically, this was a conversation that we just invited like 80 people to our house, our living room, and we had 5 people sit down and I was moderating this conversation, right? The takeaway from this is that you actually want to be someone who can learn very quickly. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you consider yourself a developer or a designer, because as AI gets better and better, it's going to become a lot easier for people who are curious to learn new skills, right? So I think it becomes a little precarious if you're like super tied to one aspect of your skill set as your identity, because someone else who maybe isn't as experienced but knows how to leverage AI tools, you know, could now have your skill set and then some, right? So I think at the end of the day, personally, I am wondering a lot about what the future of work looks like, especially as we have tools like agents, especially as I'm building a piece of software that, you know, helps people automate a lot of their job. It makes me ask, how do I keep myself relevant? How do I not automate myself out of the job? And I think the answer to that is to just always be increasing your own skill set, right? Now it's become easier than ever to become someone who's T-shaped, which means you have a very wide surface area of familiarity, and you have some deep areas of expertise, right? Like actually, if I pull up my GitHub right now, I just want you all to know that I didn't start coding until last December. And now I write code for a living. And that's because of tools like Cursor, like Windsurf, ChatGPT, V0. V0 by Vercel is a piece of like generative software, generative code. That's the program that taught me how to code. I first used V0 for the first time ever last November. And this summer I worked on V0 at Vercel, right? So I think this just goes to say that if you start building things, if you put them online, then people will take notice. People will, you know, be like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then they might reach out to you and be like, do you want to work here? Right? So like if we scroll all the way down, the first time I ever made anything with code was like this little component. This was last November. What has it been? Like, it's September now? Okay. So that's to say I didn't know what React was this time last year, you guys. I didn't know what TypeScript was. And then it just started off. So, okay, in November, I'm starting to make little side projects, right? Like I love my friends. So I want to make little digital Polaroids. This is made using V0 and Cursor, right? And then we just go one step at a time. This project here is the first thing that I ever made that actually had like an API attached, right? So it's using like AI SDK. And then with AI, the thing is that you can now make projects. This took 11 hours, like start to finish, right? That's a hackathon project in scope. And even though it was super janky and I didn't know how anything worked underneath, it was enough to like grift my way into Vercel. So just make things and put them online and people will take notice. Yeah, cool. Any other questions? Vinny, please.
Yeah. We don't, I guess, always have the opportunity to be listening to someone with like a big following, like you, like 45K person.
I don't know, man.
But like, I guess as like someone with a bigger following, do you ever feel like you have like any pressures? I guess with like the content that you're putting out.
Not really, no.
Okay,
I think for me, Twitter has always been like a digital journal.
yeah.
It used to be a digital diary, but I was like, actually, not everyone needs to know like my every thought. So I think the way I think about it is that it's kind of a playground for me to just test out ideas. Like I really love to write. Sometimes I just have like thoughts I put on the internet. Sometimes they don't land and that's okay. That's what the delete button is for. I'm just curious, keep that up, you know, keep your tweets up, even if no one likes them. And I think the way that I view it is more like it's a playground to experiment in, right? For example, about 10 days ago, I was like, you know what, guys, I want to host an event about design engineering. And then 3 days later, we reached out to like Elon. He's our friend who works on research agents at OpenAI. We reached out to friends who work at Cognition and Cursor, and they were all down, right? So from start to finish, this event, I planned it like last week. We made it happen like 2 days ago, and we had 850 RSVPs. Wow. We can only fit 80 people in our house, but I think that's kind of just to say that like you can have an idea and then validate it online and then actually make it happen. So that's how I would position it instead of something performative. Cool. Anything else? Please, Vinny. Yeah.
being in design for like the last whatever year, like over a year.
Mhm.
Do you feel like now when you like just browse websites and stuff, like your I guess experience of it has changed, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And like my background is that I started doing, you know, if we're gonna go there, if we're gonna go into LinkedIn, my background is I started doing design back in 2020. I started university in 2020 at Waterloo. So like many of you people, I was an engineering student, but I didn't do software engineering, I did biomedical engineering. And I think I fell into design because I realized that what I wanted to do, I thought I wanted to do medical robotics. It turns out I actually just want to solve problems, and design became an outlet for that, right? So because much of my experience now is in like digital stuff, like websites, products, whatever, I think it actually makes me happy that whenever I look at a product now, be it like Notion Calendar or Notion or even Cursor, I just spend a lot of time kind of like thinking about how did they design this like menu, right? Because in Paradigm, let's go to Arc. That's Figma. In Paradigm, I built their design system, right? So everything that you see here, from like the menus and the sidebar and even the tooltips, we had to sit down as a team and just like talk through these conversations of like, what do we want users to be able to do, right? Like, actually, I can show you. I told Anna I would do this, but actually, this is being live streamed. But I was gonna pull out some old Figma files that were like the product looked really different. Like if we go on the Paradigm like Twitter and you scroll down, sometimes I get jump scared because I'm like, we used to look like that. Let's see. Okay, this is a little bit newer, I think. I think this is before I worked there, December, but I don't know. Maybe it's not the best example. This is kind of just to say that whenever you look at a product, there was a level of decision-making and intention underlying it. And I think the best part about that is now whenever you look at software, whenever you look at buildings around you or clothing around you, or even the way that food is plated, you develop a deeper level of appreciation for it. I think after I got into design, I started just seeing the world around me very differently. I love going for walks, but then, you know, last summer I realized that every small business I walk past, this is someone's life work, right? Their business looks like this with the little sign at the front, you know, they chose this type of typography, whatever, because this is their livelihood and it matters deeply to them. So I think when we're able to see the world through that lens, everything from my water bottle to my AirPods to my lip balm, you know, I'm like, someone had to sit down and make all of these decisions. Like, what material should this be? What weight should it be? And I think it just helps you appreciate the world around you much more as well. Cool. Please, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, like, since you know now that you work a lot with like software but also design, like, do you think the balance that you have right now between those two is like satisfactory? Would you want to do more design or like software? Like, just curious.
Yeah, so I personally actually really love backend architecture. Like, I don't want to be writing it, but I just find it so soothing, you know? I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with Wendover Productions. It's like the logistics YouTube channel, right? I see some nods. Okay, in the past, if I was bored and I couldn't fall asleep, I would pull up a logistics video to be like, how are grocery stores operated? And then after I started coding, I started watching systems architecture YouTube videos, you know, like Byte Go and like stuff like that. It's like the thumbnail will be like, have you ever wondered how distributed systems at Uber are built? I'm like, no, I've never wondered that, but I'd love to learn, you know? So now that I actually spend most of my day like, or, you know, I spend a lot of my time writing code, I think it's really cool to just like keep asking questions. I think ultimately the tools that you use will change. Maybe the work that you do will change, but that curiosity won't. So I personally love code. I also love design. And I think I'm very grateful that working at an early stage startup lets you do a little bit of everything. Yeah. Awesome. Anyone else? Shall we call it a day? All right, going once, going twice. Sold. Class is dismissed. Thank you so much for your time. If you want to stay in touch, my Twitter handle is just my name. It's FLOGUO. And my website is also FLOGUO.com. Thank you. Really appreciate it.